Graham knows too. He's the executive editor at Newsbusters. And, Tim, I'm grateful for your time this morning. This is the thing that I was asking before we came on with you. Pew just did a poll and said that the vast majority of people still want to see taxpayer money go to PBS and NPR. And I think it's because Democrats know most people don't understand the propaganda that comes from them. They still think it's Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. Good morning, Tim.
Yes, good morning. They always play the children's television card. I was there when the House had hearings about defunding in 1995, and they played the same thing. They put Ernie and Bert puppets on their hands, and they're dramatically insincere because they're not really willing to defend the question, is PBS News a fair and balanced outfit? Everyone knows they're not. They don't want to be. They're not seeking to be that. So, yes, the Democrats had just a series of silly children's television references. I think one of them put Miss Piggy on Sesame Street. They can't even keep their Muppets straight.
Tim, I suppose at one point, like everything, like the Department of Education, there was this very noble goal of a taxpayer-funded television and radio network, I suppose. I don't know my history well enough to know when these concepts were birthed. Do you? And were they ever pure in motive, or were they always to distribute propaganda, in your view?
Well, under Lyndon Johnson, they passed the Public Broadcasting Act in 1967, and perhaps the most ignored legislative passage in history, the Public Broadcasting Act says there shall be fairness and objectivity in all programming of a controversial nature. That is a totally avoided thing. I think by the time Richard Nixon was elected, it was quite clear that PBS was there and NPR was there to take Nixon down. PBS was running the Watergate hearings live during the day. They were replaying them in prime time because they loved it. And it's been the same ever since.
Full disclosure, in college, I did some training. We had the college radio station. There were two. There was the college station, and then there was actually a live NPR radio station on our college campus. And I did do some morning work, some local break stuff, and got some training on radio at NPR. And so I have had friends over the years say, "How dare you attack NPR?" And I say, something, since my training in college at NPR, I have gone into the commercial broadcast and media industry, where I've lost my job, and I've seen profits rise and fall. I've seen colleagues furloughed, and colleagues to this day cut because of budgets. NPR and PBS seldom, if ever, have to experience that.
Well, they certainly don't have that sort of idea. They don't, NPR recently had to cut because they got over-enthusiastic about podcasts. And if you look at podcasts, the left-wing space in podcasts is dominated by NPR podcasts. One reason liberal commercial talk radio never got off the ground is because NPR dominates liberal talk radio. It is who they are. So, yes, I think nobody should ever be ashamed to say we don't need that. Anybody who listens to it knows how horrifically biased, how anti-Trump PBS and NPR are on a daily basis.
And the idea in 2025, with all of the media we have at our fingertips, literally, the idea that our tax dollars, a nickel of it, should go to fund a couple of media entities, you don't need it. It's literally unnecessary, even if they were pro-Republican and pro-Trump.
Right. Is that, I like to just say these are both taxpayer-funded MSNBC. They are highly partisan. They're highly dogmatic on the left. We have the studies to prove it. They were cited yesterday in the hearing, the way that they use terms like far right to describe the Republicans, but they can't use far left to describe anyone in the Democratic Party. No, they're not necessary. Obviously in 1967, you had 3 channels and you probably had rabbit ear antennas on the top of the set. How far advanced? We could have looked at this back in 1995 and said, it is no longer technologically necessary. And every year since then, it's become less and less and less necessary.
Here's Congressman Jim Jordan. This is cut 1217, guys. Jim Jordan having an exchange with NPR's CEO. Pretty interesting data Jim Jordan shares. Take a listen.
Former senior business editor for NPR.
How long do you work at NPR?
I believe he was there just over 25 years.
25 years? Award-winning journalist? Did he win any awards?
Our time to
Peabody Award? That's pretty important, isn't it?
That is, absolutely.
So pretty distinguished journalist, right?
Certainly.
And he wrote a long story about what you do at NPR. Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that
was award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased?
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
It's concerning. I mean, it wasn't 44-43. It wasn't 60-27. It wasn't 70-17. It wasn't even 80-7. It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans, and you say NPR is not biased. How about the big stories over the last few years? According to Mr. Berliner, again, he wrote on the Trump-Russia story, he wrote, at NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff. He said they interviewed him 25 times. Is that accurate?
I was not there at the time, but those numbers sound accurate. Yes.
Those sound accurate. But then he said when the Mueller report came out and Robert Mueller said he found no evidence of collusion, he said Russiagate faded from our programming. Is that accurate?
Again, I was not there at the time. I couldn't say.
Yeah, so this went on like this. Tim Graham, Newsbusters executive editor, she's particularly good at sounding genteel and thoughtful, right, Catherine Marr? She's an interesting woman. She gives TED Talks, and she tried to position herself as whatever incendiary things she has said or was ever a part of, that's all forgotten, and she's high-minded and different now.
Yeah, I especially liked the Jim Jordan questioning because, yes, how do you talk down? We found 87 Democrats and 0 Republicans. And you know what they said when that came out? Several of the NPR journalists said, well, we registered in D.C. as independents. Yeah, but we know, you know in that newsroom, what Uri Berliner was describing was groupthink. There are no Republicans in there to say, hey, guys, wait a second. Maybe calling Trump an orange fascist is a little over the top. There is no restraint there. And yes, Fox News actually found Adam Schiff was interviewed on NPR 32 times during the Russian collusion thing. And the second half of it was, he said, how many times have you interviewed the chairman of this committee, Mr. Comer? It was 0.
Wow. Tim Graham, executive editor, Newsbusters. Great work you guys do there. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
You bet.
Our telephone number is 855-STIGAL if you want to get in here. That lady, I think, is something like this Catherine Marr. She's done, I don't know if you've seen her. She had a rather viral TED Talk a while back where she said, we get so caught up in facts and getting to the bottom of stories. Sometimes facts, we ought to forego facts. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that was her take, that we should stop digging to get at truths because sometimes the truth is too divisive. She's one of these people that says things like, everyone has a different truth. I love that. That's pit of hell stuff that came from Oprah. Live your truth. What a nonsense thing. Too much truth causes strife. It's Orwellian stuff. She's a viper.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.